Hey, Matt.
Yes, Ryan.
Will you be a Satanist with me?
No, I don't think I think I'm good.
How about will you be an anarchist with me?
Not yet.
Okay. How about this one? Will you be a nihilist with me?
You know what? I'll take you up on that offer, but on one condition:
What is that?
that you sit here with me as we listen to this.
Ah! And welcome back, everybody, to the best music podcast out there, hosted by two best friends that knew each other since college. That's a very specific, tagline that I threw at us there.
It's a little specific, but in honor of it being our 10th anniversary since we graduated, I don't necessarily mind the callback.
So this podcast is called Hey, Listen to This. Essentially what we do here is every week me and Matt take turns picking albums that we each listen to as a group collective, and we just go track by track, essentially just saying how we feel about the said track. It could be as in-depth as dissecting line by line, what we did in the Wilco episode.
You're never going to forgive yourself for that episode, are you?
No, because it took me 20 minutes to get over the first song.
It really did.
But it could be that, or it could be like, meh, this is kind of a nothing burger.
Yeah.
So,
I really don't have much room to talk considering how I talked about Born to Run last week, so...
yeah, well, I mean, that was absolutely breathtaking, man. I was listening back to that today, and I was just like, oh my goodness, I want to, I want to feel the way that Matt feels about that.
Yeah.
Anyways, I am Ryan Kearns.
I'm Matt Durzik.
And this week, we are completing the master plan that I had that started back in 2023.
It did start back in 2023.
So the master plan that I had was ultimately I wanted us to talk about this album here, which is The Record by boygenius. However, I felt like it was going to be more impactful for myself and for Matt here to review individual albums by each of the members. So we did Punisher by Phoebe Bridgers, which I gave a 10 out of 10.
I believe I gave that an 8.
Okay. And then we went to Julian Baker's Turn Out the Lights, and I think I gave that an 8 as well.
And I'm pretty sure I gave that a 9.
Okay. And then we went to Home Video by Lucy Dacus, which I gave a 7, if I can remember.
Yeah, you gave it a 7, I gave it a 7.5.
So the other reason why I wanted to do it this way is that there's a music podcast that I follow called IndieCast, and once Stephen Hyden made the comment that boygenius as a collective, what they produce, is lesser than what each individual member brings to the table. So I felt like it would be very interesting considering how in depth we go with our dissections, and we can see the influences and a whole other descriptors I can throw at the sentiment here. Is that sentiment actually true? Do we feel like the record by boygenius is lesser than what our collective scores are? Which, I mean, let's see here. I'm going to do a quick math here. If you, while I'm doing a quick math here, Matt, what has your journey been like going down this master plan with me?
It has been very fascinating. It has definitely changed the radical landscape of my playlist.
Yeah.
To mostly, and I know this might be a cliche and possibly unflattering term, but the sad girl genre.
Yeah.
That these three women seem to be the leading forces of.
Yeah.
In fact, just in my last change of songs on my MP3, I finally took out Halloween by Phoebe Bridgers. It had been there that long. But there's still, I want to say, 3, well, technically 4, but I put the 2 together. Julian songs from Turn Out the Lights on there.
Yeah.
And also a few songs off this album, too.
Nice. And another interesting thing about this culmination of everything, it really feels like the Avengers coming together in terms of like people that are really spearheading the music indie scene as of late.
Yeah.
Because like Phoebe Bridgers has been dominating. Baker has been right alongside with her, and I feel like Lucy Dacus is quietly an underrated member of this group here, because she doesn't get the same amount of like critical praise. But it's like it's nice that this is a very touchstone moment. Recently, they announced that they were going on hiatus, so I can anticipate like each individual member going back into the studio and figuring out stuff. Also, I did a quick math, and the score that this album has to beat to be better than each individual album is going to be 8.3. So it has to be a 9 or higher.
So you're taking the averages of what you had so far.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think what that would be for me, because I think 9, 8, that's 17, then 24.5 divided by 3. So roughly, it's probably around the same, probably like an 8.2.
Okay. So it has to be higher than, well, we'll say higher than an 8.5 and higher.
Yeah.
From both of us to officially declare this as better than each individual sum of the parts. But enough that, enough like, give her gat her. You ready to get at her?
Hell yeah.
All right. So I'm going to let you lead off the first track here.
Which is called Without You, Without Them. And it's a very short, very brief introduction, which is akin to what Phoebe had done on Punisher, what Julianne had done on Turn Out the Lights, not what Lucy had done on Home Video, which is intriguing because this song, to me, feels very much like a Lucy Dacus song. She's the lead vocal on it, and it's a very... This might be the most wholesome piece in all of the sad girl genre, because it almost feels like a warm-up in a sense. Mm-hmm. Like they're just, okay, here are our voices, here's what they sound like together, ooh, ah, and now we go on to the rest of the album. But it's not just that. It's also wholesome in a sense of, telling someone that, I'm not who I am without the people who love me in my life, including some of those people that you have introduced me to, whoever it is that she is talking to or they are talking to in the song.
And, like, I know a lot of people give, like, boygenius, like, a lot of flack for, like, how they portray themselves as, like, just pure happiness and friendship. But this is what the group is basically about. Like, hey, like, let's be there to support each other. And as evident through, like, the albums that we've talked about, like, they each, like, go through their own, like, suffering of, like, depression and, like, all that stuff there.
Right.
But this song here, like, I know it's not a good comparison, but it kind of reminded me in terms of, like, how it opens up the album to the opening track off of the Fleet Foxes debut LP. This one is a little bit like better in terms of like how it sounds. Yeah, you're not hearing red squirrel in the morning.
I have yet to fully immerse myself in that album, so I can only imagine.
Oh man, maybe one day we'll listen to that.
Maybe.
But yeah, this is just you did an excellent job. Like it's basically the three voices together. It's not recorded in a way that like it's supposed to be like, hey, this is a single or anything like that. This is basically getting us used to the feel of what these three women can bring to the table.
Yeah, the only slight complaint I have about this song is how it was recorded. Mm-hmm. Because, like, I called it a warm-up, and it sounds like a warm-up because it feels like they might have recorded it on their phones, or they just maybe put the microphones on the studio and, did this as they were ready to warm up and practice. I don't know, but it's very echoey, and it's very much like has the feeling of like being backstage, which I get, and I don't hate it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if it's just an a cappella tune, and also the fact that the rest of the album isn't like this. The rest of the album is very much produced in a very professional fashion. So why they came out the gate like this, I don't know. Again, nitpicking here, but again, that's just a nitpick. It's one of the songs that's on my MP3 or my USB stick. So no complaints about me. This is just a really nice, warm introduction to the album.
I mean, like, to be honest with you, I have the same kind of note here. Like, I get what they were going for in terms of like being like, very like, hey, this is where we were at. It could have been done a little bit better in terms of production. But like two more things that I'll mention about this, and then we can go on to $20. One thing that I really liked in this track here is in the chorus, quote unquote, of this track here, they repeat the line like Lucy Dacus starts out with like, for example, "Speak to me," and then each member repeats that line, and then they also do "Talk to me, talk to me, talk to me." I like that.
Yeah, I like that too. The little chorus of the round thing they had going on, definitely very cool. And again, I think that definitely adds the wholesomeness of this song, because again, it's just vocals. It almost sounds like a hymn almost, like they're singing in church and they're about to sing in this feeling of love and happiness, like you said. And it's very fascinating that that's what they chose to start the album, because it doesn't stay that way.
All right. I feel like we hit this opening track, which is probably one of the shorter songs off the album.
One of the two, yeah.
Yeah. So, you ready to move on to $20?
Yes.
All right. So, I will start this one out. So, this track has Julian Baker taking the lead, and an interesting thing that I felt like, at least going into this track in terms of like dissecting it and like listening to it for the purposes of this podcast here, man, is the fact that none of any of the material from Baker, Bridgers, Dacus's like discography that I've heard sounds anything like this, and this is a pretty straightforward rock feel kind of song, and I'm all about it. Like, like another thing that I noticed, at least initially here, about this track is the ability for them, because this is a trio, the interplay that they have in between like each vocals, each like verse, and like throughout this track here, like specifically vamping here, vamping. Hey, Matt, you're going to edit this part out here.
That's fine.
Because I started to sputter there. But anyways, so one thing I really liked is the interplay between the three vocals, especially with how in the first two verses the group comes together with the line, "When you wake up, I'll be gone again." Mm-hmm. And like there's even like a moment at the very end where like, each one of the members is singing something completely different, but it works, man. And I'm all about it.
You know what? I will get to that. I agree with you, but I will get to that. But to start off with my thoughts, it definitely feels like a bit of shock to go from the warm wholesomeness of "Without You, Without Them" to $20, where it just goes into this fierce rocker, which, like you said, really doesn't. I wouldn't say doesn't completely sound like anything they've done. I would say it's probably closest to some of Lucy's stuff in that regard. Yeah. But even then, none of that had any like ferocious guitars like this one does. And it's also in 3/4, which was also interesting, which you don't really see in rock songs much anymore, or any songs really.
Yeah.
And as far as the lyrics, I know that this is usually your department, but I'll take the reins here. What I like about the lyrics is that, and I think a lot of this may have to do with the fact that we reviewed Born to Run last time out, is that I felt that same level of kind of escape, or just, the same old tale of, here we are in this town, let's get out of here. But it's contrast at the end with that part you mentioned, the part where it becomes, this sort of murky layering of vocals between the three of them, and they're all saying something different. And it's basically, to me, what it sounds like is this is an escape gone wrong. Mm-hmm. This is them trying to get out of town, get out of the life they've been living, and just immediately it all falls apart. They're stuck at the gas station. They need gas. They don't have money. They need $20. And it sounds like it. It sonically sounds like it. This is not one of my favorite tracks on the album, but I will say it is a very good song to do what it does. And it definitely paints a picture of being out and realizing that, hey, my attempt at escape has not gone the way I planned.
And, even to give further evidence to your claim there, literally the opening line of this track is, "It's a bad idea, and I'm all about it."
Right.
And, great job with that. I actually kind of struggled a little bit in terms of, dissecting this lyrically, because of, there's just really not much here. I walked away with the track feeling like this song is basically about being down on your luck and out of rope, and basically doing a last gasp kind of thing. So, and the whole concept of $20 is kind of a nod to the Manchester Orchestra song $100, which maybe one day we'll talk about that group. We'll definitely will. But again, to go over how the ending of this song works with each member singing their own lines and how it works so well. It's even encapsulated by the fact that Bridgers is screaming, basically this to the same degree of I know the end. And I that part just really spoke to me. This song is my third favorite song off the album.
Third favorite, okay.
Yeah. Well, we'll get down to
our choices.
Yeah. And I think the way that it worked out is as we go down, my second favorite song will come up, and then my first favorite song will come up. So
gotcha.
So my favorite song's towards the end. Even to encapsulate your point about the concept of this being a failed escape, lyrics of run out of gas, out of time, out of money, you're doing what you can, just making it run, take a break, make your escape. Overall, a really interesting song that could be just a straightforward rock song, and with intersparses of playing with the vocal harmonies, but I love what they've done with this track.
Oh yeah, I do too. It's a great piece. It's a great piece, and again, it's not one of my favorite songs of the album. But thinking back to it, it definitely improved the second time I listened to it, because like you said, the first time I listened to it, it was oh, this is just a straightforward rocker. Second time I was okay, now that I get the meaning of the lyrics, it's a lot better.
Yeah. So, you ready to move on to Emily, I'm Sorry?
Let's move on to Emily, I'm Sorry. And this is now Phoebe's turn to take things over. And what I find interesting about this song, to me, this absolutely sounds like a extra track off of Punisher, honestly. It definitely has that sort of murky vibe, similar to Halloween. Sort of a halfway point between that and Graceland 2.
Yeah. And
really, I don't have a whole lot else to say about it as far as that. It's fine. The harmonies do elevate it to a level that I appreciate more than most of what was on Punisher. And also, and this is something I don't want to dive too much into because I don't want to get too controversial about my... I won't even say opinions, but just sort of my observations, is that this is the first song that seems explicitly lesbian. The lyrics talk about how, I guess with Emily, Phoebe playing the protagonist saying, I'm sorry that we couldn't make this work out. And that's just something that kind of jumped me up a little. I was like, oh, this is actually happening right now. They're actually talking about straight up, because what's fascinating about it is the fact that Phoebe is the one member of boygenius who is at least bisexual and has been dating mostly men.
Yeah.
And that Julian and Lucy are more down the spectrum further along on the spectrum. Man, I'll edit that part out too. You know what I meant.
Yeah.
You know what I meant.
Yeah.
But they are more relatable to women in their personal lives. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
In that regard. But otherwise, it's a solid song. Would have fit well on Punisher. Fits well here.
Yeah, and ironically enough, like Phoebe wrote the song right after Punisher and sent it to Baker and Dacus as like a way to ask them, hey, can we be a band again? So like kind of like teasing them, being like, hey, look what I wrote. Like you can be a part of this, and like lyrically, like again, not my chair like you said, but you know me, like I have the softest spot in my heart for Phoebe Bridgers.
Right.
Like she's the only member of the group that I gave a perfect 10 out of 10 on.
This is true.
And like I absolutely love this song. It's not one of my favorites off the album, but like just there's so many moments here where like it's just so breathtakingly beautiful that like I can't just help but just be like, okay, I'm really digging what's going on. I'm really glad I was able to like deep dive this a little further. So like one example of this moment is like the falling feeling after the second verse transitioning into the second chorus is such a great touch, and like everything's done so purposeful, and that's a Phoebe Bridgers touch right there, in my opinion. And just even the interplay in the chorus with the vocals, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
I love it, man. I love it. And like the notes I have here about like the lyrics, it's basically about a broken relationship. Lyrics exemplifying this being, just take me back to Montreal. I'll get a real job. You can go back to school. We can burn out in the freezing cold and just get lost. And again, not much else to say about this track other than it's a gorgeous, gorgeous track. I absolutely love it, and it's actually kind of refreshing not to go over like minute by minute, line by line what this track is all about, because sometimes like it's just a moment of beauty that you got to appreciate.
Right. And for those who do want further details, go back and listen to the Punisher episode.
Where I basically just gush over Phoebe Bridgers for like an hour and a half.
Right, and I occasionally break your heart a couple times. You're like, it's okay.
So, you ready to move on to True Blue?
Yes, let's move on to True Blue.
All right, let me bring up the lyrics here. But, so, we went from an opening track that basically has everyone involved to a Baker-led track to a Bridgers-led track. So now we have a Lucy Dacus track.
A Lucy Dacus track.
And like similar to like how Emily I'm Sorry was very much in the wheelhouse of Phoebe Bridgers, like this song here really feels like a Lucy Dacus track that could have came off a home video, man.
It really does, and I'm just going to come out and say it, this is my favorite song on the album.
Oh, really?
It is.
Yeah.
Because on the one side, which is the musical side, the hook is beautiful. The verses do a great job. It definitely does have that Lucy level of snarl in the lyrics. Like it's sung beautifully because she just has a beautiful voice.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like one of those things like when you hear someone with an angelic voice basically reciting like dirty jokes. Like that's the kind of like irony that I like about a lot of Lucy's stuff. And what elevates it to it being the best on part of the album is, I believe it's the bridge where, I don't know if you have the full lyrics, but where it starts, you've never done me wrong except, except for that one time.
That we don't talk about because it doesn't matter anymore who won the fight. I don't know. We're not keeping score.
That is the best part of the entire album. Right there. Best lines on the album, best part right there. And the vocal harmonies are fantastic. They are beautiful. This is a great song about I'm not even sure what exactly it's about. It's definitely about a relationship.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure like what stage it would be at. Maybe like but, I mean, I guess it would be the stage of, oh, we screwed up. Let's see if we can heal. But just on the musical aspect alone, plus the good lyrics, instantly put this at the front for me. I could listen to this for a very long time.
I really like this track too, man. Like, in terms of like, backing up here for one of the questions that you let off in terms of like, what stage of the relationship like this person's at, in this song. I feel like this is more of like, not a romantic relationship, but like, it could even be like a serious friendship where like that other person knows you so well,
Right.
and no matter what happens, they're going to be there for you. And this could be Lucy directly writing about how she feels about members of Boy Genius.
I was just about to say that. This way, like, hey guys, here.
Yeah. And lyrics that I really really like in this track here, because like you've done an excellent job describing this track, and like I can't really add that much more. It really didn't stand out so much for me. Again, I love this track. It's a great track. Is in my top 3. Unfortunately, not.
Okay, I can understand that.
But my top track, I think you'll appreciate.
Okay.
Knowing that this is your favorite track here.
Yeah.
Little teaser for later on in the episode. But lyrics that I was going to reference are, when you called me from the train, water freezing in your eyes, you were happy and I wasn't surprised. And just the imagery of like like somebody crying so much that like they're in the cold and like water's freezing from the eyes, but they were happy that like Lucy was there. Shows like what true friendship is all about. And like another set of lyrics that I really did appreciate was, and it feels so good to me known so well. And like I'm even gonna like take a step back before I even like gush on about the rest of the lyrics here. Is like with Emily, I'm sorry, I love how restrained Lucy is here, and like she allows stuff to breathe, and just we're able to bask in the beauty of this track here.
Exactly.
It's so good. But the rest of the lyrics, just for completionist sake, are, I can't hide from you like I hide from myself. I remember who I am when I'm with you. Your love is tough. Your love is tried and true blue. So again, like, it's somebody who is a very, I feel like this is a close friend kind of song, like I mentioned. And just, it's a really awesome song. And like, I love the open fill of this track. Like, again, bang, bang, bang. Like, not including the first track, like every single song has been like, I love this track here.
Oh yeah. Every song has been good on the level of great so far on this album.
So, ready to go on to Cool About It?
Let's go on to Cool About It.
All right, I'm going to let you lead.
So, when I first heard this song, I'm thinking, okay, we're dialing it back a little bit. It's very much more of a folky song. At first, I was a little worried because the first lines that I believe was Julianne who sang first on this track, the pattern was very similar to Hey There, Delilah. I was like, are we going here? And I was like, okay, we're not. Cool. Awesome.
And you're like, no.
I don't want to know what it's like in New York City. But after that, it's just a simple folk tune. From what I've read, I believe they, I guess they gave official songwriting credit to, or at the very least, props in the liner notes to Paul Simon, who inspired this track, which I think is a great nod for a couple reasons. Number one, Paul Simon is basically the inventor or the real patriarch of sad folk songs, or at least very introspective, introverted songs as a whole. And secondly, this is very much in that folk sense of, very basic, very tuneful, and very, very smart. It's structured fantastically. I would probably say, if I were to rank the songs off this album, this would probably come in at number 3, I would say. because again, it's a very simple song. They all sing beautifully, and I do love the contrast in a sense of how the first two verses or first two goes at it on the track. The first is by Julian, second is by Lucy, and the third one's by Phoebe. It does sort of play to their songwriting themes in a sense, especially Phoebe at the end, where she just kind of takes the same simple tune and is like, okay, let's make this even sadder now. It's like, okay, all right, I see you, Lucy.
Yeah. Like, in terms of like how I feel about this song here, I'm cool about it.
You're cool about it?
No. No. I really appreciate the sequencing here of this album, especially with how this comes after, like, we've essentially had, like, each member take the reins on a track, and, like, this essentially does introduce, like, another style that, again, we've heard, like, maybe hints of it throughout, like, each one of their albums that we've discussed, but, like, not to this extent. And I love how each member gets a verse, like you said. And, like, I love how, like, in between, like, as, like, each verse transitions, that there's a new element that's subtly introduced.
Yeah.
And it's very purposeful. Like, me, whenever somebody does it purposeful and tasteful, like, that really speaks to my heart.
Yeah.
And I absolutely get up for that 10 times out of 10. But... yeah, another thing that I'll say is, like, I love how, like, we get verse, chorus, and then we get, like, drop back down to the verse of the next member. Like, it's a very nice kind of feel. It almost feels like, like they're guiding you along through the track. And, yeah, again, not one of my favorites. Do I love this track? Oh, yeah. It's a fantastic track. And another thing that I will say here, lyrically, what this song is about. I feel like this song is basically about a dissolving relationship. And I'm going to reference some of the lyrics that you hinted at with Phoebe. She sings in her verse, "Once I took your medication to know what it's like. And now I have to act like I can't read your mind. I ask you how you're doing, and I let you lie."
Right, like it's for as sort of velvety smooth as this track is on a musical basis.
Yeah.
For those lyrics to come out, it's just like, oh, you're singing it very in a pretty way, but these lyrics are not very pretty.
Yeah. So you ready to move on to Not Strong Enough?
Let's move on to Not Strong Enough. The song that was a spoiler alert for those who haven't watched it and haven't read the newspaper in a month. This was nominated for Record of the Year. This album was nominated for Album of the Year. I believe this won for Best Alternative Song?
Best Rock Song.
Oh, Best Rock Song. Even.
And Best Rock Performance.
Oh.
And this album as a whole won Best Alternative Rock album.
Okay, I got them confused.
Yeah.
So.
No, all good.
But they won 3 Grammys, yay.
And I will take the lead on this track here.
Go for it.
It is my second favorite off the album.
Wow. Okay.
And it might be a very kind of cliche being like, well, yeah, I like the big single off of it, but, like, dude, this song slaps so hard.
It really does.
And, like, like, in terms of, like, I'm gonna even discuss, like, the opening lyrics here, because, like, me and lyrics, like,
I know you and lyrics.
They're, like, flies to, like, hot garbage.
Well, there's one way of putting it.
So, like, the whole concept of this track here, Not Strong Enough, and the chorus goes, like, talking about, like, hey, I'm not strong enough to be your man, and it's talking about, like, like, just a self-doubt you feel to, like, be enough for somebody in a relationship.
Yeah.
And they use the term man, like, like,
ironically.
Yeah, gender fluid.
Right.
Non-binary, but So, like, the opening lyrics here that Bridgers sings are black hole opened in the kitchen. Every clock's a different time. It would only take the energy to fix it. I don't know why I am, and that leads into the chorus. So, like, the concept of, like, a black hole opening up in the kitchen, it's something, like, catastrophic that you cannot face, but every clock's a different time. Something that you can really, like, it just takes, like, 2 seconds to fix, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it would take the energy. It would only take the energy to fix it. This is basically like her talking about like, hey, like even though it would take only a little bit of energy, I don't know why I can't fix it. Like I feel like this existential dread,
Yeah.
and like something that's completely comforting, like being in the kitchen, but I can't just complete a simple task. And there's other moments in later on in the track like I could talk about, but like again, you really, even taken out of the lyrical standpoint, like this song has an excellent chorus.
Yes.
Has a nice like build in terms of like what happens in that bridge. That bridge is freaking fantastic. I absolutely love it. There's just several moments here where like I'm like yes, please give me more of this.
Yes, which is interesting that you said that because. And this might be why it's your second favorite and not your favorite. Because first of all, you did a fantastic job of pretty much showcasing that. This feels like a strong performance and a strong coalition between the three and their strengths.
Yeah.
I mean, it rocks hard. It feels. I wrote down Phoebe lyrics. This feels like Phoebe wrote this.
Yeah.
In a sense, even though Julian, it seems more like a vibe of like what Julian's trying to go for, branching out to like more of a full band sound.
Yeah.
Also, this could also be Lucy's doing because she's more of the full band type at this point. And it reminded me of a couple of songs. One that you like, one that you really, really don't. Because I thought like on the one hand, it's like sort of alty enough with like keyboards and electronics to sound kind of like. Somebody Told Me by the Killers.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it sounds folky enough to sound like I Will Wait. And I'm thinking, Ryan might hate this one, actually.
Yeah. I mean, I can see the comparison, but like the way that it's constructed, it's so purposeful. Like something I even realized just now, man, while talking to you, is like how each verse in this track here ends with "I don't know why I am," and then the chorus kicks in "the way I am." Like it's such a freaking smooth transition.
Oh yeah.
Like holy cow, dude. Like
Yes.
like this is something that Mumford and Sons wish they could have wrote.
Right. This is I Will Wait done with meaning and purpose.
Yeah. But even talking about like further lyrics here, I'm sorry, I'm going to gush about this song for a little bit longer if you don't mind.
Go for
but
it.
like even in the chorus, talking about stop staring at the ceiling fan and spinning out of things that haven't happened, breathing in and out. Like, this is encapsulating what the feeling is of like, hey, I'm completely worthless. Like, I'm staring at the ceiling fan in my bedroom and I don't even have the courage to get up and face the day. Like, and how this is contrasted with like such a happy, folksy feel. Like, I'm absolutely all about it, man.
Oh yeah, it deserves all the accolades it's gotten. It's a song that deserves to be on the radio more than it probably is, or whatever you want to say about that. Because I haven't listened to alternative radio in so long, but that's aside the point. The point is, great song. I also have it number 2 on my rankings.
No, cool. I'm gonna be interesting. Now that we're essentially halfway. Sorry, that was
I'm gonna be interesting.
like
I know what you meant.
I'm interested to see what. Like, okay, so we're halfway through this album at this point, right?
Yes.
And I've gushed about like every single track here, except for like the first one, practically. But like knowing that my top favorite track is yet to come, could you pinpoint what it is at this moment?
I think so.
Okay, so lock in that pick when we come across that track. I will when I start talking about it, I will let you know it's my favorite track.
Okay.
So we'll see how that goes.
Okay.
I'm just kind of curious to see what.
I will make a bold prediction, though, that this next track we're going to talk about, Revolution Zero, is not that song.
I mean,
because it's not mine.
yeah, I mean, it's not my favorite track either.
Okay.
So, speaking of Revolution Zero and how it's not your favorite track, tell me more about Revolution number 0.
Yeah, so Revolution Zero, as Ryan alluded to, sort of kicks off the second half of the album. And as we've talked about, all these songs so far have ranged from good to great to amazing. This is the first song on the album that's fine. It's fine. I understand what they were trying to do, or at least what they were trying to pay homage to in a sense, because obviously Revolution Zero is a play on Revolution 1 or Revolution 9 that the Beatles did.
Yeah.
And the Beatles were masters when it came, especially towards the latter stages of their career, like especially with Sgt. Pepper and the White Album, and especially Abbey Road too, how they used the second side of their album, or the flip side to an album, in order to reset things, reset tone. Particularly talking about Within You, Without You on Sgt. Pepper, resetting the tone after the chaos of Being the Benefit of Mr. Kite. Or Birthday, offsetting the folkiness of the end of side 2 of the White Album. Or most notably, Here Comes the Sun on side 2 of Abbey Road. Like, they just completely reset the tone. That one offsetting the doom metal almost of I Want You, She's So Heavy. That was probably the Beatles' most experimental track, or one of them up to that point. But I digress. This feels like they're trying to reset things, reset vibes, in a sense. And they do, but I'm not sure it was the right direction. Because this track just kind of sounds very wispy, in a sense. Like, It's not bad. The harmonies are good. The lyrics are fine. But it really, especially compared, and a lot of this might have to do with juxtaposition, because if you're coming off of that run, that absolute run of the first half of the album, especially with True Blue, Cool About It, and Not Strong Enough right in a row, this is a major letdown. It's not a bad track. It's not a bad track. It's fine. But fine doesn't compare to greatness, in a sense. I don't know if that's a good way of putting it, but that's how I'm going to put it.
It makes sense, though. Like, you go from, like, big track to big track to big track, or, like, just different, aspects.
Yeah.
And this song right here definitely does feel like, okay, hey, you're flipping the record over and you're reaching the second side of it.
Right. And it does actually make me wonder, too, like, if artists are starting to think that way again.
Yeah.
Which I do appreciate them trying to think that way. I mean, obviously, not everyone's going to go out and buy the vinyl record.
Yeah.
It's 2024. Look at the economy. But not everyone has the means to go out and buy vinyl all the time. But the fact they went ahead and did it anyway is a nice homage. Again, I just think that the track doesn't have a whole lot of muscle. I wrote down that it's an objectively good track. It's subjectively meh. It has Punisher vibes. It has the lyrics of Turn Out the Lights. And it has the violence of Thumbs, which wasn't my favorite track off of home video anyway. So I think this track was sort of doomed to disappoint me. But again, that's just my opinion.
I really like this track, man.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, like,
Is it your favorite?
No, it's not my favorite.
Okay.
That one's coming up. I mean, like I basically alluded to. Like, this is gonna be a grand reveal of what my favorite track is off.
It
this
really
album.
is.
But no, like, what this song reminded me of?
What's that?
Moon Song off of Punisher.
Okay. Yeah.
And like, even taking a look into like what inspired the song.
Yeah.
This is another like, hey, let me write a song about my love for Elliott Smith.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like that's why you got that vibe, those vibes there. But like again, this has a lot of Phoebe's like DNA all over it, in my opinion.
Yes.
In terms of like the the pauses and like how like things are just purposely put in there, like string swells and the second choruses, and how that is so freaking beautiful. And like the pause between the first verse and the chorus is so good. And even in the outro, with the lines, I used to think if I just closed my eyes, I disappear. And how that leads into the track cutting out for a moment, just fading out and coming back in, that is so good, man. I absolutely love that. And I mean, the lyrics are not really all that much to write home about, but they're not really the focal point here. Like,
Right, I get
there's
that.
there's points where like you can write like lyrical masterpieces, like how they basically showed off their skills and not strong enough to be your man. And then
Right.
there's moments like Revolution Zero, Emily, I'm Sorry, True Blue, where if you really take a second and just admire the beauty that they bring to the table, and like just realize that the lyrics are more like a backdrop and a descriptor of what's going on,
Yeah.
as opposed to like the focal driver, and so you can really appreciate the beauty of tracks like this.
Yeah, I can get that, and you did a very good job of sort of describing some of the intricacies of the track that make it work. Again, this track very much is a good track. It just didn't grab me as much as the others did, and that's more of a taste thing than anything else.
And that I can respect, man. All right, ready to move on to, I think, one of the shortest tracks off the album, Leonard Cohen.
It's definitely either that or Without You, Without Them as the shortest, but both of them are under 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And this is Leonard Cohen. This is full on a Lucy track or a Lucy bridge, if you will, because it's so short.
Yeah.
But honestly, it's I would say it's up there with some of the stuff I love the most on this album, because I could just envision the ambiance it's going for.
Yeah.
And I know nobody is going to get this except you or I, but I don't care. It's our podcast. Do you remember that old picture of you I took at Geneva where you were playing guitar on the side of, or on the steps, I guess, of Johnson Gym?
Yes.
And it had that weird tint to it.
Yeah.
That's the kind of tint I get hearing this song. A very summery, bright sun, out on the road, summertime song.
Yeah.
In a folk sense. I love the description of, how Lucy's with his significant other who is driving the wrong way on the interstate because he's so focused, or she's so focused, on this song that they want to introduce to Lucy.
Yeah.
And the way she paints the ironies of, you might like me better because you know me more, and I might like you less because you know me more. I love those contrasts so much. Again, it's a song that and that's a lot of this album too. It feels nice, it feels warm, but when you hear the lyrics, you're just like, wait a minute, you're trying to, you're warming up the food before you stab the knife in it.
So, funny story that inspired like this track here, because the opening verse that you described, like, hey, like this person driving the wrong way, and you need to listen to the song.
Mm-hmm.
So what directly inspired this track was, so the members of boygenius were talking about great songs that didn't have a chorus. And one of the songs that Phoebe Bridgers wanted to show the other members, and when I heard this, man, I wanted to cry, because this song that she showed the other members means a lot to me. It's one of my favorite songs of all freaking time. It's called The Trapeze Swinger by Iron and Wine. For those of you who have not heard it, pause the pod, go listen to that 10-minute song, come back, feel enlightened. And
I would, but I'm recording it right now.
But like, whenever I heard that, I'm like, oh my goodness. Not only is Phoebe Bridgers like, an amazing human being from all of like standpoints like I've seen so far, but she references like this song, and she like, this is my go-to, hey, this song doesn't have a chorus, like, oh my goodness. I digress. So apparently, like, while they were driving and listening to the song, the members of boygenius, Phoebe just got lost in the song and just spent once she realized, oh hey, I missed the exit of where we needed to go. Like they had to double back and they wasted an hour going back into track where they needed to go.
I'd love to know where they were, because that sounds like a really long time.
It was probably like rush hour in LA traffic, so.
Nah, that or they were stuck on 51 heading to 88. Anyways.
Yeah. But, yeah, like, in terms of a lyrical dissection here, like, it's really broken up into, like, two parts here. I feel like the chorus is kind of like it's not really cohesive in terms of, like, you know, each part interlinking. Mm-hmm. It's, like, really broken up into, like, two separate parts there. But, like, the second part's talking about, like, Leonard Cohen and, like, it's basically, like, there's not really much there. Like, the thing that I realized that I did, love in the second verse is the change up in the strumming during the line, and I'm not an old man having an existential crisis. That's a nice touch.
Yeah.
But overall, is this meant to be like a absolutely like blow your pants off kind of song in terms of like beauty or like, you know, lyrical execution? No. I feel like they may have included it in the track listing because of the incident where Phoebe spent an hour driving down the road.
Yeah.
Because of a song. But yeah, that's all I got, man.
No, I think you summed it up very nicely. I think, again, it's a nice little piece of metal. Like, again, if Revolution Zero is supposed to be there within you, without you, this is more or less there when I'm 64. Just sort of a nice little fun tune to offset what it is that just occurred, in a sense.
All right, so the next track is Satanist.
The next track is Satanist.
And this is another group like track here where it's kind of like, you know, structured in a way that's like in terms of like how each member takes a verse and there's a chorus. It's like kind of like cool about it in a sense, but completely not that.
No. The tone of this is a bit more straightforward. The tone is more rock in a sense.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds me, in a sense, I just thought about it, of Normal Person by Arcade Fire off of Reflector. Mm-hmm. Just a very basic track, and, you know, discussing the ironies of wanting to rebel against the system and yet not having enough clout, power, personal vindication in order to actually do that, you know?
Yeah.
Because when you say, do you want to be a Satanist, do you want to be a nihilist, do you want to be an anarchist, the only one that's really achievable is nihilism, and that's clear by this point of the album that none of these people making this album and none of the people listening to this album are going to achieve that.
Yeah.
At least in the truest form of sense. And I like that because it basically says, you know, okay, you know, these are extreme ways of being a human being that probably aren't good, but because it's trendy and everything, we're going to be like, hey, sure, why not?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think this is a very solid track. Definitely has a bit of a slowdown at the end, which you can get more into, but yeah, I like it.
So, Julian was inspired to write this track after watching a satanic documentary and thought she could be a Satanist and questioned if her friends would join her in this phase of her life.
Oh.
So, yeah, a little known, like, you know, background of this track. And this is one of my favorites. It's not my favorite off the album.
Oh. Strike another one off the list.
I know. It's coming up relatively soon. We only have, like, you know, a handful of tracks left to go. But, like, the nice call and response, I really do like. And how each verse, like you kind of alluded to, each verse begins with a question, will you be a blank with me? And how, like, the rest of the lyrics in that verse reflect that.
Yeah.
Like, I'll take Dacus's nihilist verse for example, because that way I can show some love to another member of Boy Genius that isn't Bridgers. Um, but so the verse goes, "Will you be a nihilist with me? If nothing matters, man, that's a relief." Solomon had a point when he wrote Ecclesiastes. If nothing can be known, then stupidity is holy. If the void becomes a bore, we'll treat ourselves to some self-belief. Oh, you know what? What should I do? And I like the contrast and like how each member can take like a verse and like really reflect on the question that they want to bring to their friends.
Right.
And like even the instrumental break towards the end, it's a very nice touch. It's very tight. I like it.
Yeah, and what you just said there about how Lucy ends that particular plea for nihilism by asking someone else, "What should I do?" Like that just gives the game away right there.
Yeah.
Like if you really were a nihilist, you wouldn't actually ask somebody because you wouldn't care.
Yeah.
True nihilism is based on not caring about anything at all whatsoever, which in a sense may make the whole idea of declaring nihilism to be against nihilism itself, but that's not what this podcast is about. The point is, solid song, very much a roughed up version of Cool About It, and that's perfectly fine with me.
So you ready to move on to "We're in Love"?
We're in love. Let's move on to it.
Okay. And we've arrived
Oh, have we?
at my absolute favorite track off this album.
Interesting.
This was not the pick.
I get why it's the pick, but I'm a little surprised.
Okay.
Because realistically, because you've been gushing about Phoebe Bridgers for the majority of 2 episodes of this podcast now.
Yeah.
And yet, this song, I don't think, aside from the harmonies, has really much to do with Phoebe Bridgers.
It goes to how beautiful this song is. And, like, I even specifically remembered this song here from my very first listen of this album, even before, like, this podcast was a thing. Like, the opening lyrics, how Lucy Dacus is basically saying, "You could absolutely break my heart, and that's how I know that we're in love." Like, the rest of the lyrics off of here are so sincere, so freaking beautiful, and so freaking breathtaking, in my opinion.
Yeah.
That this was an easy, like, win for me. Like the more I listen to "Not Strong Enough to Be Your Man," or "Not Strong Enough to," and like the way I was able to dissect that track, it got closer to being my favorite song. But how the song is just so stripped back, and how like it's just an outpouring of the heart from Lucy Dacus, and like absolutely vivid lyrics. Like even like lyrics of "So put down the knife, we're not swapping blood." Like it's so freaking personal, and I absolutely love this track, man.
Yeah, I love this too. It's not in my top 3, but I did write down it is a beautiful, haunting performance. And if not for True Blue, this would probably be my favorite thing that Lucy did on the entire album.
Yeah.
Because it really is just such a beautiful, heartfelt song. Although I did say that even though the Lucy is pretty much the focal point of the track as far as sound and delivery, it felt like Julian could have wrote this.
Yeah.
Because I definitely got the heartbreaking vibes from "Turn Out the Lights" on this. Just the absolute like gut wrenching feeling that Lucy has like lodged with it, or that's just barely being held together. And that's what I felt throughout the entirety of "Turn Out the Lights." And to me, what really made this track stand out is like, obviously throughout this album we had seen the 3 of them work together, but this definitely feels like a true synthesis of styles coming together.
Yeah.
Sort of the hushed tone of Punisher, the heartfeltness of "Turn Out the Lights," and just Lucy Dacus being Lucy Dacus, which musically and sonically usually is great.
Yeah.
So I definitely understand why you chose this song as your favorite. Maybe on future listens of the album in the future, it might be mine too.
Yeah.
Wasn't that the case this time around, but that's the great thing about art, is that you could look at a bunch of different times and come up with different conclusions.
Yeah, absolutely. And like a couple other notes about this track here, then we can move on to Anti-Curse. I love again, the purposeful instrumental point, sections here, like in how like everything was chosen purposefully, like the gentle piano throughout this, and like even in the second verse, how like there's those string swells. It adds such a nice touch, man. Like whenever I've gushed about like how this album has many moments of that, and even in moments in Bridges' Punisher and other tracks off the other albums. Like, it really shows how like these artists can really cook, and they can really like use different elements that if you really lean in and listen closely, it adds a whole other dynamic to it, man. Like it's absolutely breathtaking. But yeah, that being said, you ready to move on to Anti-Curse?
Let's move on to Anti-Curse.
And I'm gonna let you lead this track.
Okay. So another bit of whiplash on this particular album, because again, you go from the warmth and the sort of velvety darkness of "We're in Love" to another straightforward rocker, another Julian piece, which to me definitely feels like this is the evolved version of what she was going for on "Turn Out the Lights." I mean, I hate to keep referencing the record, but that's the only one of hers I've listened to, so that's what we're going by. And it definitely has the feel of, her dealing with her own inner struggles of, worth and, what she's worth as far as, like, her faith and her relationships and everything. It was not one of my favorite songs on the album, but I did like a lot. I wrote down, good lyrics might just be lyrics. That the lyrics aren't necessarily anything to write home about, but they are pretty solid.
Yeah.
The band sounds good. The vocals sound good. I really don't have a whole lot to say about it, except for what I already said, that this feels like a full band version of something that will be off of Turn Out the Lights.
So, you know what? There was a moment in this track here where I feel like it kind of harkened back to a track off of Turn Out the Lights. And that track in that album was Sour Breath.
Yeah.
And how this song has a point where she's like singing like, I'm swimming back.
Yeah.
That was a nice little nod that I caught there.
Yeah, I think that's kind of why I came to the conclusion that I did, is that the themes are being sort of recycled and in a way that's very tasteful, and again, it's bringing back themes but in a different way, which contributes to evolution.
So this song was apparently inspired by Julian's near-death experience drowning in Malibu Beach, and like in terms of like lyrical stuff, like it's very I don't know, it's very, once you know that, it gives a lot of context to it, like lyrics like let's see, salt in my lungs, holding my breath, making peace with my inevitable death. I mean, that's kind of like, cut and dry right there. Now that you know it. I like this track. Is it one of the ones that I'm going to absolutely gush about? Not necessarily, to be honest with you. Like, it's a really good track. I will put it up against, like, anything off of, like, it's a good track. It seems like I'm coming to terms with like how I feel about this track. I'm like, is it a good track? Yeah, it's a good track.
But is it a good track?
But no, getting more of a focus here. I appreciate the guitar tone off of this track here. It's a very Julian Baker style, and how the drums come in halfway through the opening verse, and how like they come crashing in, and like even in like the chorus, how it's highlighted by drum fills and instrumental crashes. It's a very nice touch, man.
It is. Again, this is a really good song. Again, not a standout for me, but definitely strong. It's another one that's objectively good, more so than subjectively good, in my opinion.
Yeah. So, that being said, you ready to move on to the last track off the album, Letters to an Old Poet.
Letter to an Old Poet. And this one is definitely a... well, I actually should... I guess since I left off the last one, it would be your turn this time around.
So, this is a... well, and at least initially, this is a Phoebe Bridgers
Yeah.
track, and how it just starts out with her and the piano. And I just love how this track does open up a bit when everyone joins in, and they also add piano lines and strings. And I feel like this track here is a very nice wrap up to the album.
Yeah, I could get behind that. I wrote down it's a soft landing.
Yeah.
But it's still a good landing. And the one lyric that jumped out at me was when she says, "I love you, I don't know why, I just do." Mm-hmm. Which to me feels like not only it matches the musical summation of this album with a lyrical summation of this album, sort of a reconciliation with all the chaos that we've been through so far.
Yeah.
And what makes it so good in a sense is, of course, the harmonies of everybody coming together, but also that it reminded me, because I know I mentioned before, "Normal Person" by Arcade Fire, because I had just listened to Reflector a few days ago. The ending of that album, Reflector, was a song called Supersymmetry, not counting the 5 minutes of hidden bonus noise, which you don't need to listen to.
Yeah.
But it very much this is a calm track that sort of, fades out the chaos from the rest of the album, the harshness, the sharpness of some of the avenues that we've gone down in a very nice and appeasing way. Again, not a standout, not a track I'd be like, oh yeah, I need to hear that again. But a nice soft landing to the album I can appreciate.
There's a couple moments with this track here that, upon initial listen, I really did not appreciate to the point that I do now. And we talk about how multiple occurrences in this album here, either A, they're talking about friendship, or B, they're talking about a significant other.
Yeah.
I feel like this track here, it could be taken in one or two ways. One, you're exiting a bad relationship with a significant other, or B, you're coming to terms with how you were before as a person, and you're exercising that demon and getting rid of that part of you.
Yeah.
Lyrics that exemplify this are, "You're not special, you're evil, you don't get me to tell me to calm down. You made me feel like an equal, but I'm better than you." And then even further on, lyrics that really drive home this message of wanting to move on and get on with your life are, "I want to be happy. I'm ready to walk into a room without looking for you. And I'll go up to the top of our building and remember my dog when I see the full moon." And I like that message there. In terms of are there big moments here where how we talk about "Emily, I'm sorry," "True Blue," "Not Strong Enough," and even impactful lyrics "We're in Love." Not really, but in terms of how I would like this album to end, this is a perfect ending for me.
Yeah, and it's funny the way you describe those lyrics now. This does kind of feel like a song about a breakup of some sort.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, the one imagery I was reminded of, I don't think I've referenced this show in a while, but I'm going to go ahead and say it anyway, is the divorce of Diane and Mr. Peanut Butter on BoJack Horseman.
Oh, yeah.
How she was basically saying, I've been trying to see through the lines to find that little bit of light that's still shine between us, but my eyes are tired of squinting. And that was just the devastation of that moment. Not that that's the most devastating moment of that show. It's just a really sad show for anybody who wants to watch. It's also really funny, highly recommend. But
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with you. This is a nice way to end the album. I wouldn't go as far as saying it's a perfect way, but I'm perfectly fine with it.
So we did it, man.
We did it. The master plan is just about complete.
So now the only question that I have, and the audience has, and you probably have, is this album better than each individual album that we reviewed from the members so far.
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah. How do you feel? What's the rating?
Okay. Personally, I feel that this album. So I'm of a couple minds of this album. On the one hand, I think this album is fantastic.
Yeah.
I think this album is very much. I would say it's considerably more enjoyable than Home Video or Punisher, and probably as enjoyable, if not slightly better, than Turn Out the Lights. But on the other hand, there's a small part of me. There's a couple things. Number one, to me, whenever I was first envisioning this album, I thought that this was going to be a full true synthesis of these performer strengths, and in a sense it is. But there's also a small part of me think that they could possibly do better on this. And of course, they still have, plenty of time and, hopefully trust with each other left in the tank in order to accomplish that. But that being said, I am going to say, yes, this is at the very least as enjoyable as one of the albums, and more so than the other two. I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10.
Cool. So that would clear the benchmark that you said.
Yes.
Because I think at the start of this episode, we said your average rating was an 8.2 or something, right?
8.2, yeah.
So, now it is my turn. It's funny, whenever this album came out, one of the gripes I also heard about this album is that it's extremely forgettable. Every track sounds the same, and they all kind of blend in together. You'll start the track with that opening a cappella trio, and then you would get down to a letter to an old poet, and you would feel oh, what just happened? What did I just listen to? That's incredibly short-sighted compared to every moment that this can bring to the table. I feel people that had that mindset, they don't take the proper time to actually lean in and maybe listen to this album.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even taking the time to really dissect what Phoebe, Julian, and Lucy bring to the table, and what the intended effort was with creating this album. I absolutely would say that this is better than what each individual member brings to the table. As much as I'm gonna I will have all the love in the world for Miss Phoebe Bridgers. What they're able to create with this, with tracks of Not Strong Enough to Be Your Man, Cool About It, Satanist. You don't see any of those tracks coming from any of those members going forward and what they've done so far. You can see bits and pieces of it, but in terms of what a true collaboration with the three of them looks like, in my opinion, you go to those tracks, you find that. And even in a song like $20, that's a completely unique track that they're not going to be able to replicate ever again. That being said, this is not a perfect album. As much as people might have been anticipating, including yourself, thinking as much as I'm gushing over it, tracks that bring it down for me are Without You, Without Them, the opening track. I might have butchered that title there.
No, I think you got it right. Without You, Without Them.
Without You, Without Them.
Yeah.
The production could have been a little bit better on there.
Yeah.
I get what they were going for. Leonard Cohen, how that was basically included because of that story about Phoebe driving down the interstate and missing the exit. I get it, and I love I was able to hear that Phoebe Bridgers loves the song Trapeze Swinger as much as I do.
Yeah.
But they could have cut that. They could have cut that off the cutting room floor. If they would have cut that and the first track, this would be an easy, perfect album for me. And even songs I don't know, there's a couple moments where they're good songs. They're not breathtakingly beautiful,
right?
And but
they're good, but they're not really memorable.
Yeah, would I return to this album? Would I buy the vinyl? Absolutely. I'm gonna give this album also a 9 out of 10.
So we agree, and that saves us some math because we can average that out to a 9 out of 10.
So collectively, we both agree that the record by Boy Genius is better than the average of the sum of the parts.
One last thing before we get to our next album recommendations, or if you like this, listen to this albums. Would you agree with me that you think that they can do better, or is that not something you agree with?
I would. I'm going to concur with that opinion. Okay. And the reason why I'm saying that is, like, I feel like this album was born out of the feelings of the dread that the pandemic brought on.
Yeah.
And how, like, these three basically wanted to encapsulate, like, the feelings that they had together as three members of the LGBTQ plus community. I know I missed some letters in there. I apologize.
Right.
But, and, like, how their friendship really encapsulated, like, you know, the feelings that they really had and they felt like they needed to, like, explore to survive the pandemic. And, like, it's evident, like, you know, songs like Leonard Cohen and, like, a couple other tracks, like, even, like, the song, like, We're in Love. Apparently, Lucy wrote that song, and she first introduced that to the group by singing it to Phoebe Bridgers in bed. So,
oh wow,
yeah. So, like, this is they're like they can do better in terms of, like, in my opinion. Do they want to do better? No. Like, this is the record that they wanted to make. And will we get another Boy Genius record down the road that could perhaps do better? Sure.
I hope so.
Yeah. But are they gonna? I don't think so, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, that's up to them.
Yeah.
If they want to do that or not.
I'm personally holding my breath to see what Phoebe Bridgers does next, but, you know, that's me.
Yeah. I'd probably be more inclined to see what the other two do. Because, again, I really like Turn Out the Lights, and I think maybe this is, you know, inspired Lucy to sort of intricate her sound a little more.
Yeah.
But again, that's their artistic decision. They can do whatever the hell they want. So as far as the next album I would recommend based off this, and again, my rule, I have to have listened to the album in order to recommend it. So I am going to go, again, way back in time, because we were talking about a supergroup project where it sort of sounds like a synthesis of all the members, but not necessarily in a sense that it's, like, completely blended into one thing.
Yeah.
The prototype for this goes all the way back to 1970, which is the album Deja Vu by Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young. And this album very much is in the same vein of, you know, top artists working together, coming from different avenues. David Crosby having been with the Byrds, Neil Young having been his own thing, and also in Buffalo Springfield with Stephen Stills, and Graham Nash from the Hollies. You know, this album very much is a hodgepodge in that same regard. There are some great songs off this album, some great moments, like Teach Your Children, their cover of Joni Mitchell's Woodstock, Carry On, and to some degree, Our House. It's actually a relatively short album. It's only probably about maybe like a half hour long, but it's still very good. But it also isn't as blended as it could be. And I kind of got the same vibes from this album I did with that album, but I think they worked better here as of these are three really good singer-songwriters coming together to make an album, and that's exactly what they did. So, Deja Vu by Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young will be my recommended album.
Cool. I think you're going to be a little bit surprised, but maybe you might appreciate my recommendation.
Go for it.
So my recommendation is going to be Dragon New War Mountain, I Believe in You. By Big Thief. And the more I thought about it, and, like, you know, the more I really thought that this was an appropriate recommendation in terms of, like, feel and, like, how expansive that album is and how this album covers, like, a whole bunch of different styles. And, yeah, not much other than that. Like, you know, I could have done the Boy Genius EP that predates this album, but in my heart of hearts, in my gut of guts, like, this is the album that I chose.
Okay. And one more thing before we wrap things up. Could you imagine, just to blow your mind for a hot second, if instead of doing another Boy Genius album or EP, they recruited Adrian Lineker to join them?
I don't think the world's ready for that.
Yeah, I don't think you can even name that band. It would just be the sound of an orgasm as the name of the band.
Oh my goodness. I absolutely love that. That's the title of the episode.
Yeah.
No.
We may have to negotiate that. My parents might be listening. No, my mom.
All good.
In fact, I might even edit this whole part out for all I know.
Yeah. It might be for the greater good.
The greater good.
But I digress. So, that being said, Matthew,
Ryan.
where are we going next?
Well, I've been holding off for a little bit, but I think it's time we start going a little international. So, a few episodes ago, I had you choose between Seattle and Canada. You chose Seattle. We did In Utero. Now we're going to Canada. In fact, we're going to sort of right along the American border with the band, by the band, from 1969. And considering it's been a while since you've listened to some good old-fashioned down-home country folk type of songs.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to do next time.
All right, cool. Well, the good thing I got my passport ready, man.
I hope so, yeah.
Other than if I didn't, I would have to be an illegal alien going in there just for my quick visit. But I mean, that might be a hot take to do.
Yes. I've heard they're nice people, though.
So that being said, do you have anything else to say about Boy Genius, this album as a whole? Before
Again,
we wrap it up?
it's a great album. Hopefully they do one, but if they don't want to, that's their prerogative. At least we'll always have this.
Yeah. And I'm incredibly grateful for the experience that we both had in terms of the dissecting, like, you know, Phoebe Bridgers, Julian Baker, Lucy Dacus, and like even this album, because it really took my appreciation to each individual member up a whole new level.
Yeah.
So I will be spinning this album and like each other album that each member like has in their discography for the immediate future going forward.
For sure.
But that being said, if you've made it to this point of the episode, one, thank you for listening to this episode of Hey, Listen to This. If you liked what you heard, and if you've gotten to this point of the episode, it's pretty evident that you liked what you heard.
Yeah.
But the best way that you can support me and Matthew here is by rating this podcast on your podcasting platform of choice, because that's how we get picked up on the algorithm. If you are one of those people that are listening to us on the YouTubes, hit subscribe. Give us a thumbs up on this episode here. That's the way that you can best help support us, because I think that this is our 20th episode now?
Yes, this is number 20.
Yeah, what an appropriate episode. Hey, look at that.
Opa.
But, and if you guys want to, get more content from us, we are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Threads. The tagline is CT Hey Listen. If you have episode ideas and you want to suggest them, one, reach out to me and Matt personally if you know us in real life. Or if you don't, you can shoot us an email at ttheylisten@gmail.com. But for the last time in this episode, I am not a Satanist, but I am Ryan Kearns.
And I am not an anarchist, but I am Matt Durzik.
And we are not strong enough to be your men.
Wait, what?